I am the Reverend Ellie Hutchison. I am the Minister for Congregational and Community Engagement here at the United Church of Christ National Ministry setting. I am a part of the Faith Info team, and we are a part of the Love of Church. I use they, them pronouns, and today I am wearing a mint green sweatshirt. I have a pixie blonde haircut, and I'm wearing a very old pair of glasses that are kind of helping me be able to read my script today. Nurture the Soul, Beloveds, is a weekly webinar that provides our local churches and faith practitioners with a multitude of practical, educational, innovative, and formational resources in which to engage with the critical topics of our time, to center the care, and to remain curious, for all of us are the children of God. From cultural and community organizing to congregational leadership, from worship and theology to resourcing small and rural churches, from the ministry with our youth and children to a wide array of justice issues. We feature guest artists, authors, pastors, reverends, historians, theologians, regular old people like you and me, and key leaders. Nurture the Soul stays current to how the gospel is alive in this time. We hope that this virtual space is indeed a space of connection, community, and that your soul is indeed nurtured because we believe in the collective movement towards a world that God imagines for all of us. So we invite you to join us every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Nurture the Soul, and then on Mondays between now and whenever for our special offering of What's Next. To get information about all of the United Church of Christ digital programming, you can visit our website at www.ucc.org/events. And then, of course, follow us on any and all of our social media platforms. And I just want to give a thanks to our marketing and communications department for making these webinar series possible and for helping you all learn about them. So the back end is so much more important than what I get to do. And so, friends and beloveds, if what you hear today, if it helps to enhance your ministry, if it helps to just get you connected to our divine spirit within each of us, we hope that you consider donating to the annual fund of the United Church of Christ. And you can do that by texting the letters UCC to the numbers 41444. And it is your donations that help to keep these conversations going. But before I introduce this week's guest, I'd like to bring you into the conversation as much as possible. If you were watching this live, we invite you to use the chat feature to tell us where you're zooming in from, what your faith community is, and you can continue the conversation throughout. You can find the chat feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and it looks like a dialogue bubble with 3 dots in the middle of it. We also invite you to ask questions, not just today, but in all of our webinars. And you can do that also. It's at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It's that dialogue bubble, except it has a question mark in it. And we will get to your questions at the end of our program. And so, beloveds, today we are joined by some people that, I know it's not the right way to say it, but I have just adored these individuals, and I want to be a part. I want them to all adopt me, even though I'm older than probably the majority of them. But I want to be a part of their family, and I'm grateful that I actually am in very unique ways. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Today, we are joined by the Dr. Sharon Fennema from Join the Movement, and she's going to be facilitating the conversation between my beloved Joe Kirk. Joe is a certified campus safety professional, and he is so much more than this bio, but I thought this was important for the context of today. Joe uses his skills to engage faculty, staff, and students in creating a safe campus community. Joe was promoted in 2022 to the position of Assistant Dean of Students, at the College of Worcester to broaden his impact with the students and the greater community. Reverend Sarah, I'm going to say this wrong, but I'm going to say Marian, has served churches in Minnesota and Massachusetts, and most recently as the pastor of First Congregational Church of Wilmot, New Hampshire. She was elected to the New Hampshire Conference Associate Conference Minister position in October of 2022 and began that position in January of 2023. And finally, Miss Judith Booker, who is a member of Plymouth United Church of Christ in Detroit, Michigan. And Judith has served in several positions within the local church, her association, her conference, and even the wider national ministry setting. And again, beloveds, there's so much more that these beautiful humans do in the world and contribute to the world. But for sake of time, I wanted us to just get into the conversation and turn it over to Sharon to invite us in. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Ellie. It is so good to be here with all of you who are joining us and with this crew of amazing folks who are willing to lean into this moment and offer us some ways to think about how we create community in times like these. I'm especially mindful of the ways in which we are more and more aware of the divisions that exist between us in the United States, especially, but around the world, I would say. And I think these folks have some wisdom to share with us about what it looks like to come from different places and have different experiences, and to really love and be with one another in the midst of that difference, to hold it tenderly and to learn from one another. So I'm excited to share this conversation with you all. So I just wanted to begin with a kind of simple question. Tell us how you all met and what the space that you've shared together has meant to you. Who would like to begin?
I can start, that's fine. So I am bigger part of what I've been doing in the past 3 years is being trained as a facilitator for Sacred Conversations to End Racism, and then learned about the movement makers workshops that take place. We meet 4 times a year, and got assigned to this lovely group of people in our small group, and we started dialogue and conversation from there, and generally just connected in such strong ways, and being able to hear each other's stories and share a lot about who we are as individuals, but how we fit in the larger picture.
Well, I'll follow you, Joe. I recall our very first meeting, and we were put in small groups, and Joe and I happened to be partnered together, and we found out that there were so many commonalities. And by the time we came together as a full group, Joe and I were laughing and sharing stories. This group is very unique. I really don't know. We got placed together truly arbitrarily, I'm positive, but I want to say the divine helped.
And it was sort of an immediate connection. We were joking that we all had great intentions to do all the reading and be really good students, and none of us did. So it was an immediate connection around not being the best that we could be and hoping we could do better the next time. And yet the conversation was so rich and deep anyway, even though we hadn't had all that background, but we were able to connect through our laughter and our honesty with one another.
Yeah, I think definitely, Sarah talking about what we didn't do was a good place for us to start. But in that, in exploring what we hadn't done, kind of, well, what is it that brought us to the movement maker group? Why did we feel it was important? And then, for me, I was just, I hate groups. Like I really have to force myself to do groups. I love people. I love all of the people almost all of the time. I just don't want us to all be in a group together. And then let alone put us into a Zoom breakout room. I was one of those, I don't know about any of y'all, like when Zoom first started being a thing in 2020, by May of 2021, whenever I participated in anything that required a breakout room, I exited out, right? And I had to really fight the urge to do that in this group. Not because of this group, but in the movement maker gathering, because because I don't like it. But then I felt the pressure of who I am, at the national setting, and really wanting to impress Sharon and Vilda. And so I wasn't going to bow out. And I just, there's a reason. I often say no, and then I end up doing it and I end up loving it. And I think about the folks on this screen with me today, like all the time.
I love that. I love too the way that you show us that sometimes it is being real about who we are and where we are that is what connects us to be able to say, like, this is how I'm showing up in this space and have it be received. That's such a big part of, I think, building community and being able to hold that with some laughter and some generosity of spirit. I think that is a huge part of what I hear you giving witness to in your coming together. So how has your connection helped you better understand and be present to this moment? What has it meant to you to be in this group connected in this time?
Yeah, I don't start again because I think there's a combination of things. One, it was that people willing to be vulnerable and say they didn't do something, because I'm always that person that's like, I didn't, but will someone else say it, or do I need to say it and then feel shame that I didn't do the things because everybody else like, oh, I did, it was great. Well, I was like, okay, great, I shouldn't have said it. But I think that vulnerableness was a big part of us being able to feel a sense of connection. I think because you find those individuals who you feel that sense of connection and you feel that sense of realness and genuineness to, that you want to meet, that you don't begrudge it. A lot of times you have meetings, you're like, oh great, okay, let's get this done. But that's not where we are, and that's not where, when we get together, we actually lose track of time and realize, okay, we got to stop because we got other things going on. And so it has been genuine, one, for me to find connection with individuals who are all over this country, and know that we have been able to find a way of bonding and being able to be with each other and be able to make each other laugh and make each other genuinely share stories, and whether it be stories about our children or grandchildren, or whether it be just what happened today and how that connects with someone else's life elsewhere. When I know that Sarah and I had this whole conversation about daughter going to college or whatever, and just those whole pieces of all that, how that fits. And so just knowing that you have a place where you can go and you can feel not just pressure to be on, or but just to be. And that's just a beautiful part of being able to say, that there's something strong here. And I know, like, my family, when they see me talking these of our meetings, they're like, y'all are having way too much fun. Are you actually doing stuff? Because it just feel like that sometimes.
Yeah, and if I may, Joe, real quick, I feel like, because that first gathering of a small group gathering, right, we learned a little bit about who we are, and ultimately, because of the society we live in, we come back into, well, what is it that you do for a living, right? And I think the need for community at a college campus, in our own, as we move from working into retirement to balance family, and then our volunteer commitments, because you sometimes work harder when you're retired. And then being a conference minister, associate conference minister, overseeing, how is it that we build community, is how I felt like it gave me the permission to be brave in spaces where I didn't understand why everybody was together. That's what being with you all have taught me?
What I realized is with this group, we could really be ourselves and be vulnerable, because sometimes we came to our sessions, and there may have been something weighing on us. And the fact that we could share, and we had, oddly enough, I would say we gained one another's trust, because that was a very important factor. We gained one another's trust early on. And I think it was one of those sessions when we said, did you? And none of us had done. And that lets people know that there are people out there just like you, trying to make it from day to day, functioning, doing your job, doing your volunteerism, whatever it is you have to do for that day. But sometimes there's something heavy on your heart, and it shows on your face. And the fact that we've taken time to listen to one another and give advice to one another and to share and to understand that, yeah, I've been in that space. I understand you, or I haven't been. And thank you for sharing and allowing me to be a part of that time, and maybe even a healing process in that time and space, so that when we get ready to say goodbye, we're joyful. We're always joyful when we get on, but we're always joyful when we leave. We laugh, we commiserate, and then we laugh again.
And I think Judith kind of hit the nail on the head there with the vulnerability piece being so important. I think that honesty around, not just what we haven't done, but also like our struggles. We talk about our kids, we talk about our workplaces, we talk about, our pets. We have these sort of like wide-ranging conversations about all kinds of different things. And they really do, as Judith beautifully said, go from like the funny and hilarious, where we're talking about the weird things that our pets just did, to the really deep, like, I'm really scared about my kid kind of conversations. And I think that level of trust has allowed us to have this sort of, place where we can just shed tears and laugh and like, gain that strength that we need for this time, which is really hard.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful dialectic, isn't it, between trust and vulnerability, right? That we lean into these moments with vulnerability, and we that blossoms into trust in certain ways. And I think that's so countercultural, right? We in times where, I think in our culture, especially in times where people are afraid, we want to be less vulnerable. We want to be more protected, more contained, and that doesn't yield trust, right? That yields distrust. Everyone looks like an enemy, or everyone looks like someone who could cause harm. And so I'm just grateful for your witness to this pathway of vulnerability that results in the deepening of relationship and the building of trust as one of those ways to meet this moment. I don't think a lot of people are talking about vulnerability as a way to meet this moment, but I'm grateful that that's what y'all are raising for us. And I'm curious, as you're thinking about the differences, the different backgrounds you come from geographically, professionally, what are you doing to care for yourself and your loved ones in this moment? How are you meeting those care needs for yourself and for the people who are around you?
I think for me, it's trying to mirror finding friends that are similar to this group makeup, similar to where we have people where we can be vulnerable. Because if I can't be me, then I'm hiding and I'm sheltering, and I'm not really good for anyone if I'm not able to be me. And so I think that's a real strong piece of that for me that has been enriched in the past 4 years, particularly with Safe Conversations. And then this group, it's just been one of those things that said, you have to be you. And that means being vulnerable. That means, being scared. And that means also knowing where you can land or place things so that you can feel supported and so you can feel built up. And then I think those things, because the more I feel that in me, I'm able to do that for my family and I'm able to do it for my friends. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of writing, poetry writing, just as another way for me to kind of help grow in that, but then able to share those things and experiences with this group. I think the first session I wind up singing a song because music is another part that kind of does that for me. And and that's a very vulnerable to sing with people you don't know, but you're like, okay, where's this gonna go? How's it gonna be? But being comfortable in doing that and feeling supported in that moment and being able to talk really full that and how that landed in me and being able to do that was just enriching.
So with this group, taking care, I reach out to my family. They are a really strong source of support. And then I have what I call my core friends. But I have to share this group, my family knows each one of them by name. They know when I say, oh, I got to go, I'm getting ready for my movement makers, because I actually look forward to spending that time, because I know, especially now, I know that it's important for us to reach out and just say, how you doing? And as when you're in other groups, I've shared with this group um, other instances that they might want to participate in, and that helps you. It's expanding your world and knowing that it's important to take care of yourself first, but also checking in on others to make sure that they're all right as well.
Yeah, again, I second what Judith beautifully said about expanding the circle. I think there is such a tendency, at least within myself, when things are hard, to shut down, to go inward, to close the circle in rather than open it up. And so I think this has really helped me to have that in place, frankly, before, this month, that I can reach out to these folks and get that sustenance I need. And part of it is just permission to, and I think Joe spoke to this, to be where you are. At our last movement maker, I think that Sharon and Velda had lots of plans for us, and it ended up being a whole, what was it, an hour and a half of people just checking in about where they were at. And I needed that space to say, I am nowhere close to being okay. This is not, I am not in a good place right now. And I don't know when I will be in a good place. And that for that to be just okay, folks to say, yeah, me too. And it's okay. And I think Velda did a beautiful job at the end of sort of saying, we don't need to move on. And in fact, we shouldn't move on until we're ready to move on. That it's okay to be wrecked inside, and to feel that, and not to feel guilty about that. And to let yourself be healed before you then move into a different space. For me personally, I do a lot of healing being outside. I try to get a walk in every single day, and just outdoor time, just breathing the outdoor air, being in nature. I find just necessary, frankly, for my mental health. And when I don't do it, I notice it. So that's part of my maintaining my mental health, is that.
I, in the realm of vulnerability, have really failed pretty miserably at this over the last 2 weeks. I think, Sarah, you talked about our movement maker gathering last week, and I think I shared the analogy of being numb, when a body part falls asleep because you slept on it wrong, and where it starts to fade away and you feel like you can get up and like walk or grab a cup of coffee or something, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, actually no, it's still there, the oxygen still isn't there. I am coming out of that a little bit more. I would say nature as well. I live in a wonderful, beautiful state that has so much biodiversity that could be lost, you know, well, will be lost at some point. And so going out there and realizing how small I really am, and then being witness to things that are, because of a seasonal change in the southwestern part of the state, happens differently at a different time. Witnessing the season change and what is alive and what is dying at the very same time has really helped to provide comfort to the ever-present impermanence, you know, that we have. I usually drink water. I haven't been. I've been drinking a lot of cucumber lemonade, which is what you see me drinking out of my coffee cup. I have a new puppy, so that is a distraction in a loving way. But I really like, you know, Judith, you know, a little while ago said something about laughter, right? Laughter isn't just something that is an intellectual practice for me. It is a whole body. Like I laugh with my whole body. And so being amongst the group here on this, you know, in this webinar today has been very soul giving for me to know that I have commitments that are beyond my immediate. I have commitments that are beyond my congregation. I have commitments that are beyond my direct community where I reside. And it's to people that I've never been to their homes other than what they're willing to show on their Zoom screen. And my commitment to them is to be the best version of myself. So that way, when and if something were to happen, that I can give them my whole self. And so I am really just checking myself at getting better, at drinking more water, at dancing more, at making sure I'm in the spaces where I'm laughing, because it is okay to laugh. Many communities have taught us the importance of both dance, singing, poetry, fiction, prayer, laughter, all of that stuff during really, really difficult times. And so I want to honor all of the people who gave before me in that way, and continue to teach those around me that it's possible.
I love the image of like concentric circles of care, like the way it's your circle, your personal circle, then circles of community like this that help you feel cared for in a way that then allow you to broaden out to care for ever widening circles. And I think even as you're saying, Ellie, like invite us to kind of thaw a little in our ways of being and loving, and what we can let in and care about in these moments when what needs care seems so vast, I think. So thank you for that image. And, you know, knowing what you know now about the political landscape, I'm curious what these relationships that you've built with one another, how they help you imagine or dream for 2025. I think imagination is going to be a key for us, and it's often hard when we're in these moments of crisis. So curious about what your relationship, this relationship you've been building, helps you imagine or dream for 2025.
I guess I think about how I can stretch this relationship to, and the energy and the genuineness that comes from it, to create other small groups. When I think about working on a college campus, too many of our students are hurting. And I think particularly since COVID, many of them have become dismissive of relationships and dismissive of connection. And what I have learned particularly from this group and others, is that connection is like a lifeline. It's thrown at you and you have to grab hold. You have to value it and appreciate it in order to know how it can carry you through. And I think so the big part for me is trying to get students, particularly in that 18 to 22-year-old age range, to understand how those connections are powerful and valuable. And you can't just toss them aside, that you really have to hold on to them, and because they can and will be very life-saving for a number of different reasons. And I think that that's what people have kind of lost track of, at least what I see daily when I work on a college campus and try to figure out, we have issues with people who are seniors, have been friends for 3.5 years, and one incident happens and they're done. And that's so much of where we are with our young people today. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do we get them to understand and appreciate connection? And so I talk about this group a lot with some of my students when I'm meeting with them, to talk about what I have gained from that, what has been enriching to me, what has helped me even know that we commiserate together at times. When we talked about what happened, in the election, we commiserate about that, but also how do we grow from it? How do we become stronger in spite of what played out?
I think what's important, and Joe, you really hit a very important point, is that we actively create these types of community. And sometimes that's difficult because not everybody wants to be, as Ellie said, there are a lot of people that are very resistant. But if you start with just a small group of people, just like this group here, and take the time to cultivate and nurture the relationship. Any relationship takes work. Sometimes it's easier when you have a group of people like this group. It was very organic. And I think that was something that we appreciated. It wasn't forced. It was never a forced relationship. And so my goal for 2025 is not just to reach out to, because I am a senior, to the seniors, but also to the young folks, in building that connective relationship, because it helps people just thrive, not just survive, but thrive, and be open to hearing things that sometimes we just don't want to hear, but know that we must hear. And how do we protect ourselves and also gain knowledge to move forward and to work together? Because that I think is what's been missing of late, is people don't seem to want to work together. So it's learning to build the relationship, to nurture it, to water it. You plant the seeds, you water it. It's just like a plant. You take that plant and you put it in the pot, and you say, okay, I'm going to put some food in there, and people talk to their plants. I talk to mine, and you say, okay, so plant, now what are we going to do? How are we going to move forward? Oh, I see a dead leaf here. Trim that, help it to grow. And it's nurturing that relationship. And this Movement Makers has taught me that regardless of what's going on, good, bad, or indifferent, we absolutely need one another. We cannot survive in isolation. And once we realize that, even though there are these differences that we have, and especially with this most recent election, it has devastated families. But how do we move forward? And that's where I'm looking at, is how and what do we do to prevent the destruction of our world, our environment, all the things that we hold dear to us. And so that's my goal for 2025 and forever, really.
I think for me, movement makers, both the small group and the larger group, is a source of hope. That I'm in a pretty despairing place right now, and hearing others talk about their histories of being being parts of movements that have gone through struggles, that have been through setbacks, that have had to overcome obstacles, hearing that that's possible. And I think it was Velda who, connecting it to the past and to history, her ancestors who had to deal with the horrors of slavery, like, and sort of understanding that there is hope, even when it feels hopeless, even when it feels despair, that I feel despairing. There is hope, has been incredibly important for me. I might not feel that hope right now, but hearing others articulate it, is really like, it just keeps me going, and that energy will indeed come back to me, that I will feel that hope in my bones too, and that I then can be part of these movements, going forward, movements for justice and, for human beings and our planet. And so that's been really life-giving, even when I have felt like hiding under my covers and crying all day long, knowing that others are out there, um, articulating that, fighting for that. And in a sense, it feels like fighting for me too, that we're part of this together. So I would say hope.
And I say the larger movement maker gatherings and the smaller ones have really invited me to remain and stay curious. And in it, I felt like a certain sense of being held when being a student of loneliness, and what loneliness looks like in my own life, what loneliness looks like in my congregation's life, in this group. We've talked so much about loss and the fear of loss, and the loneliness when we have to explain to our children a sense of violence that they have yet to see or know in the flesh, right? Maybe violence that is genetically tied to who we are as a people in this country, but what does it mean in a real-time sense? And so in that, I am just, what I know now is that all of us, to a certain degree, have given in to loneliness, and in that becomes a space for the people who want us to be lonely, who want us to be disconnected, who want us to be divided, to win. And this group, I get excited when I see the calendar invite, that we all finally agreed on a time and found a time zone wise, because I think we crossed 3 time zones, right? We have East Coast, Midwest, and then the West Coast / Mountain Time / Pacific Time, whatever Arizona's in. And so it's an invitation that even in our own loneliness, that we can find connectedness and encouragement. Building on a little bit what Sarah said is, and kind of when you were talking, Sarah, the book Parable of the Sower and Octavia Butler comes to mind pretty constantly. And she says, there's nothing new under the sun, but there are new suns. I told y'all I was going to get emotional, but y'all are my new sons. SUNS, right? You are my new sons. You are the places that I want to bask in the sunlight, in the glory, in the new opportunities, in the imaginations, in the curiosity, in the reaching out when perhaps we didn't even know that somebody was lonely. I want to be driven, continue to be driven by that. And I can't do that by myself, right? And so I'm very grateful that the divine came in and said, y'all are going to get together in this small group and openly admit that you haven't done what you're supposed to do. And then you're going to laugh. And then you're going to share the commonalities. And then you're going to appreciate the differences and then see where we're connected even in those differences. Yeah, that's what I know now. I'm ready. I'm ready. My signature is, let's start a kindness conspiracy on one of my emails. On one of my other emails, it's like, let's start a love revolution. Like, give me my bell bottoms and my freedom songs. I'm headed out.
Yes, I love this vision. And I'm so grateful for all the visions of what I would call interdependence that you are lifting up, the ways that you are talking about how we carry hope and courage for each other, the ways that we are sometimes we are what the other needs when the other can't muster it, and the ways that you're demonstrating the strength that comes from moving at the speed of relationship, as Adrienne Marie Brown talks about, like this sense of really investing in building these deep connections and moving at the speed that helps maintain them as you go, and imagine what 2025 might be for you. So I'm grateful for that reminder and the visions of interdependence you're lifting up. And I just wanted to say, if there are folks who are joining us who have questions, if you have anything you'd like to ask this amazing group of wise ones, please put them in the Q&A or in the chat. And I just have one more question myself for you all. And it really is about what encouragement you might have for others who might be listening to this now or later, who are finding themselves frozen or feel ill-equipped to face the divisions and the challenges that have been revealed in new ways in this moment in our country. What encouragement might you have to share based on your experiences with this group?
What I would say is that what I feel is my heart being held in the hands of these beautiful individuals who have been nothing but glorious and joyous to share with. I think that immediately that dreadful Tuesday when the election results were coming in, these are the people I thought of and prayed for because I knew from our conversations how this was landing in them. And I think to know that there are people out there who are there holding faith and praying because they know you, they know your hearts, and they know your soul, and they are praying for those hearts and souls because they care. And so knowing that there are caring people, not just in my family, but throughout this country, for me, that has been nothing but joy and hope and keeps the fight within me going.
Joe, I echo your sentiments. I would suggest if you find just one somebody, and it starts with that one person, and take the time, do a Zoom, do a phone call, do a coffee call or tea, whatever, and just start off with conversation and allow yourself to be open. And that's I think that's the piece. I go back to trust. It's allowing yourself to trust that other person and knowing that as you peel back the onion, if it's not someone that you know well, to peel back the onion and know how much to allow yourself to share in the beginning. And it gives me hope because I know there are others out there in each of our communities, whether it be church, reading groups, whatever it may be. that are like-minded and you trust, and you know that everybody, not everybody, that at least you're on the same path. You're on the same path. And for me, at this point, you may want to clean house a little bit. It's necessary. You know, every so often you have to throw out the clothing that you don't wear. And then say to yourself, okay, so I'm going to keep these that I have, but I might need to replace one or two. And those are the people that you look for, you replace them and take time to replace. And do it with a loving spirit and a loving heart. And know that none of us are perfect, even though we think we are. Because in this group, we are all perfect. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to whomever. I have one more thing. There's in this group, Ellie was the one that caught my eye initially as we met as a small group. And as I listened to her today, you have revealed even more of who you are to me. Thankful for you being you. Sarah, you're that gem. You are a brilliant gem. Quiet sometimes, but there's a lot going on. And Joe, you just stir the pot for us. You keep us moving. And for that, I'm thankful for each one of you.
Thanks, Judith. So yeah, I mean, this is nothing, I've said this before, but I think widening one's circles is so helpful. Um, sometimes I think I'm so busy. I've got 3 kids, I've got a full-time job. I'm just constantly going, and it can feel like I can't add one more thing. And yet this one more thing actually ended up being so much more energizing and life-giving than so many other things in my life. And I think, I think it's partly because you all are like outside of my daily circles, and it gives me a perspective and a knowledge and an understanding that I think I desperately needed. So I think widening the circle, and then the vulnerability piece, as we've all talked about, it was at our last movement maker. I think I was the first one to say, I'm just in a really bad place. Like, I don't really have any hope. I'm feeling pretty bad. And it was remarkable how many, like that place of vulnerability, which was really hard for me because as Judith said, I am sort of a quiet person, opened the door for other people to say, yeah, me too. I'm really not doing well. And like that helped, I think, us all to kind of feel like it's okay. And then for Velda to give this beautiful sort of ending of it's okay to be where you are, which I found so healing. So it was really a wonderful lesson for me that as hard as it is to sometimes be that vulnerable, to speak those truths, it's really important. And it is the inbreaking of the Spirit. It is the inbreaking of God, where when we allow ourselves to be in that space together.
And I want to thank each of you as well. Judith, that's why I changed my hair so many times since we started meeting. Just kidding. I want to come back to the body. The advice that I would give folks, where does your body feel vulnerability? Right? So when we talk about vulnerability, I get butterflies in my tummy, but not like I just met somebody I want to spend the rest of my life with kind of butterflies, right? I get a little bit of, I suffer from severe asthma. So there's that moment when I know I can feel the attack coming. that I'm gasping for the last full breath I'll be able to have until I can breathe again. So that's where vulnerability, that's what it feels like for me in my body, in my chest, in my belly, like in the front. And I say that because not every moment not every moment are we able to be vulnerable in. And in the spaces where we can't be vulnerable, what does that feel like in our body? And then after we breathe, after we sway, perhaps, after we pick our nails, perhaps, so whatever it is, whatever our body, our embodied reaction is to comfort our nervous system, ask yourself, be curious, why was I afraid to be vulnerable? And then when you do vulnerability in the other way, where the way that we've talked about it today, in regards to being able to laugh, we've cried, together. We've sent emails to each other saying, with the wrong dates and times, and there's been grace and forgiveness and all of that vulnerability to admit that we didn't do something we wanted to do. There goes those butterflies again, right? But this time they're lifting me up. My breath quickens and the pace of my language. I get excited like a little kid who opens up a brand new toy, or gets a hug from somebody that they loved and miss or whatever. So return to the body. So much of our society, and I could spend an hour talking about the evils of capitalism and how it's trained us to be separated from God. And it's a continual repetition to be separated from everything. So having a spiritual practice, having an embodied practice, having people that are different from you to be able to just see past your blind spots. Because like if I were to spread my arms out like this, my peripheral, I can't see any further than that. But you all can. And you are the only people that have ever been able to truly see me in my real self, because even the images I see in the mirror are a reflected, distorted image. So I'm going to figure out how to love the people who have seen me for who I am. And push back against the just do it mindset, to just push forward. Because there is not a single thing on this earth, and nobody's been able to convince me to that yet, that has been able to go at it alone. Not one thing. And we are just that small part of that grander nature that Sarah talked about earlier. We're just that one part. So why would we ignore everything around us that's telling us how to live in community? Why would we ignore that? Other than capitalism. But again, another series, another time. Judith, your voice, the way that you were able to come into the space and at that time when we first met, you didn't have a voice, right? You were struggling to talk, but there was such a comfort and an acceptance, that as somebody who's done racial justice work for the majority of my professional and personal life, crave from somebody who is this beautiful human, who is also a Black woman, who is also an elder, who is also a leader, who is also a child, right? You just made it I just felt like you are the sweatshirt. You just wrapped yourself around me. And Joe, we're from Philly, right? So we connected to our geographic area. We connected to our experiences with those that we love and care deeply for, who are diagnosed on the autism spectrum disorder, right? Your song that first night, the poetry that you write, you are what I want to continue to become. I love that. And then, yeah, Sarah, I just yearn to be as wise as you are, and honestly, as vulnerable as you have been in this space. I see, for me, another white person who is very honest with the struggle of what it is to be in our pastoral leadership roles, in our community roles, and advocating for what Judah said, for people to thrive, right? And I'm just honored to be alongside all of you. Thank you.
Appreciate all of your reflections, and it makes me think of a line from A Blessing by Jan Richardson, where she says, "This is the blessing that comes when we leave behind our aloneness, when we gather together, when we turn toward one another." And I think what you've been revealing to us is that very blessing that comes when we turn toward one another and love one another in all of our humanness. And I love the image, Sarah, that you had of the inbreaking of the Spirit in that moment when your realness met other people's, gave other people permission to be their real selves. And I love that as a image of what it means for the Spirit to be present, is when we get to be real with one another in those kinds of moments, that connecting of realness. So thank you so much for the way that you've blessed all of the people who are here and all who will see this, and each other and me, through your sharing and your connection with one another, and your offering of these insights for all of us in this moment. I'm grateful for each of you and all of you together.
And thank you, Sharon, for facilitating the conversation. Thank you, and Sharon you and Velda, for the amazing intellectual, thought, soul, heart giving labor that you do each and every moment of your life in order to bring people from 3 different time zones and so much more together to have the difficult conversations, and to dig deep into the things that make this country great, and also the things that we have a lot of work to still do to grieve and to heal from, so we can be the better versions of ourselves. And I want to thank each of those participants: Sarah, Judith, Joe, all of those who have joined us virtually, online, live. If this webinar has moved you to want to have these kind of conversations on your own, to learn more about how you can support or become a part of the Join the Movement network, or to even just learn from each and every one of us, we hope that you share this webinar with somebody that you think needs it. I've been able to read some of the comments that have come in the chat section, and I want to thank each of you for being present in the chat as well, and grateful for that. Beloveds, this isn't the last What's Next series. We have more coming to talk about what our faith, what our Creator, what our relationships and commitments to one another call for us during this time in our nation. And let's be real, it's this time in our world, right? The United States of America is not the only country or continent that is going through this heartbreaking change, this breaking open, if you will. And so please join us on Mondays, but this Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Nurture the Soul, the regular series, is back for an installment to talk about immigration. Will there be calm after the storm? We're going to be joined by 3 pastors who are involved and engaged in doing the work in 3 different geographic areas. We have representatives from Texas, Arizona, and California who are going to be sharing what is really actually happening at the border, like for real, and then what it looks like for real in the upcoming months and all of that stuff. But I love each and every one of you on this collective webinar, and all of those who've participated. Let's go start that love revolution, and we can do that by turning it over to Joe.
Dear God, we want to thank you for this time together. Thank you for this movement maker family that I have gone to love and to appreciate. And we ask that you help all of us to find connection, to find hope, and to find joy. Because we just know that those things in 2025 will help us get through, will help us grow, will help us be. In your name we pray.
Siblings in Christ, if you are moved by this conversation, if what's been offered here has helped enhance your ministry or has nurtured your soul for the journey, please consider donating to the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your support will help to provide programs like this, which are an essential part of our ministries in the United Church of Christ. Thank you for your support. Be blessed on your journey and know that you are not alone. We are holding you in prayer. Amen.